Back before my girlfriend Eliza and I started dating, we hung out all the time as good friends. We both obviously didn't have the same feelings for each other back then, but we did enjoy each other's company. This happened around the time where we both started to feel that there was something more to our relationship than friends. It was the winter of 2018, and we both had planned a skiing trip up to Vermont. Vermont had really good slopes, and with us having some experience with skiing, we were up for a challenge. We rented out a hotel room close to the ski resort as it seemed the most convenient for us. We took the gondola ride up to the mountain and had a great time skiing. As much as people don't like the idea of skiing, it was actually really fun if you practiced. That being said, we spent most of the day skiing and having a blast. Apart from the ski resort was a hiking trail and lodge for people who either didn't want to go skiing or if people wanted a break. It was nearing the end of the day, and Eliza suggested we take the hour-long hike around the mountain. Now, this hike was sort of a do-it-at-your-own-risk type of hike, meaning there was no trail guide or anything like that. The only thing we had as a guide was some painted markings around the trees to know where we were going. Even though it was a beginner's hike, it was still really easy to get lost in these woods. Eliza and I started our hike, just enjoying ourselves and whatnot. We're about 20 minutes into the hike when she has the urge to pee. It wouldn't be for another 50 minutes or so before we reached an actual bathroom, so she said she'd go into the woods and that she'd be back. I watch as she walks off the path and into the woods before disappearing behind a large tree. She went pretty far off, but I thought she just needed extra privacy, especially us being on our first trip together. However, as the minutes passed, she never returned to the path and I didn't even see her. I then thought to myself, what could she possibly be doing that's taking her so long? I thought. At this point, she had been gone for a good 10 minutes, and that's when I started to get worried. I step out of the trail and follow her footpath to try and find out where she went. Thank God I see her standing by a small clearing with her phone out. Then she motions for me to go to her. When I walk up to her, I see what she stopped for. In this small clearing was what I could only describe as huge bones. Maybe bear, maybe horse, I don't know. The majority of the bones were organized in circles, and even some formed into a teepee of sorts. There were also some smaller bones hanging from trees by some string. I asked Eliza what the hell this was. As expected, she didn't know, and we began to wonder if the resort knew about this. There was also what appeared to be a half-formed humanoid snowman type sculpture next to the bones, indicating that someone had recently been here. All of a sudden, we both began to get a strange feeling that we were being watched, and we got out of there ASAP. We were not going to stick around to find out who or what made this, as it didn't strike me as anything good. We told the resort, but we never heard anything back from them after our trip. In the off chance that the bones were fake, it could have very well been someone easily pranking us. However, I'm not sure if I believe that. We're now a couple and plan on getting married soon, but we'll always have this story to share. In 2011, I moved to a college in Colorado during the winter for my master's degree in psychology. The school had a really good program, and a master's was mandatory for my career. My financial aid covered housing, and I had a single dorm that sat right on the edge of campus. Most of my classmates were nice, and my professors were some of the best, especially at an Ivy League school. Mid-semester, I had my midterm coming up and had a lot of homework to do. Living in a one-bedroom dorm with basically no friends, I decided that I'd take a walk to the woods beside the dorms. It was nicknamed Jordan's Forest. I still don't know who Jordan was or why it was called that, but a lot of students would commonly go there to smoke and stuff. I was never into that and hoped for a moment to myself with nobody around. So anyway, there I am, heading down the trail, keeping to myself when I decide to sit down by the old fountain hidden deeper into the woods. Apparently the fountain used to belong to a fraternity at one point. However, I guess they haven't used it in a while, as the fountain was hanging by a thread and appeared to have been unkept for years. As I'm sitting by the fountain, just reflecting on life, I hear footsteps in the snow from behind me. I turn around, and standing there is a man with a jacket and hat on. He gives me a friendly gesture as a way to say hello, and me, being the shy person I was, gave him a quick smile. He then comes up to me and introduced himself as Doug. As I said, I wanted to be alone with myself at the moment, and having someone else nearby really killed the mood. However, I didn't want to come off as rude, so I tell him my name and went on my phone to act busy. Right away, something seemed off about him, and he didn't exactly look like a college student. If I had to guess, I'd say he had to be in his late 30s or maybe early 40s. He proceeds to sit down beside me while keeping a short distance before saying, "So, is this your first time on campus?" he said. "Yeah, I just started my master's," I said. He looks at me with a smirk and says, "Oh, I see. Well, you'll love it here. You seem so young and bright. You do fine." I thank him for the compliment and tend to my phone to try and talk to him the least I could, hoping he'd get the hint. After some minor small talk, I finally say it's getting colder and that I was gonna head back to my dorm. As I'm walking away, I could just feel his eyes glued to the back of me, and the minute I turned around, I saw him staring at me. It wasn't until then where I started walking a little faster, hoping he wasn't following me. When I created a safe enough distance, I checked behind me once more and didn't see him. I breathed a sigh of relief and entered my dorm to continue studying for my midterm. However, as I was studying, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. I'm not one to be judgmental or anything, but he didn't strike me as a student at all. I'm not saying older people don't go back to school, they do, but there was indeed something off about him. I studied for another 2 hours or so when I decide to call it there and settle in for the night. I freshen up in the shower when my friend from my homestay calls me via FaceTime. This is someone who I haven't spoken to in weeks, so I step out of the shower with my robe on and gladly answer it. She was mentioning about how she got a new job and how she just moved in with her boyfriend. Basically, a bunch of life stuff. We're talking on the phone for a good hour or so when I decide to lean my phone against some books so the camera is on me. She continues her story and such when she suddenly stops mid-sentence and looks at me strangely. When I ask her what was wrong, she says that there's someone looking into my room from the window. My blood ran cold and I turn around and see what I can only describe as Doug peeking through my window. The second he spots me, he ducks down out of view. I begin telling my friend that I had met this man earlier and didn't know who he was. She recommended I call campus security, and I did just that. I even had my friend still on the phone with me as a way to make me feel like I was with someone. As I'm on the phone with security, I hear my doorknob start to move and someone trying to open it. Thankfully it was locked, but I'll never forget the voice Doug made while trying to open my door. It was this low and gravelly voice, telling me that he could easily break this door down with one kick. I'll admit, I started to shed tears right then, just wanting security to get here. When they did, they had arrived with the police who then placed him under arrest. Turns out Doug had actually been a student here once and has since been homeless for over 5 years. His girlfriend died while they were both in school and had chose to live near campus as a way to cope, as this was the last memory of her and him together. I will say I did feel some sympathy for him, but I couldn't allow him to continue what he did to me to others. Up until recently, he was released from prison for good behavior, and the university has since banned him from being on campus grounds. I graduated with honors a year later, and I haven't returned to campus since. I'm a 27-year-old male now, but this story takes place when I was around 14 or so. I lived in North Carolina and I've lived there my whole life, even when this happened. I'm not a huge guy by any means, so at 14 I was thin as a toothpick with little to no muscle. This will be important in the story later. The following events took place around early December of 2011. It was late at night in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was home alone. My mom was working in urgent care that night, and my dad was out of state on a business trip for work. Seeing as my mom worked late, I had the house to myself, and with it being winter break, I spent most of my night playing video games. Everything from COD all the way to Minecraft. After playing for quite some time, I take a look at the time and see that it's well past 9 p.m. Me, being the skinny kid I was, decided to head downstairs and fix myself a snack. As I'm heating up my food, I looked to my left and noticed the door that led into the basement was open. Now, my family is very strict when it came to leaving doors open, and I always made sure to close them. Mind you, I rarely go into the basement, so I was surprised that my parents left it open. Having OCD myself, I prefer things organized, so I went over to close the door when my heart sank. I almost didn't notice it, but at the end of the stairs was a black figure sitting on the bottom step. By some stupid luck, he was facing the other way, so he didn't see me. I felt my heart legitimately sink into the pit of my stomach as I realized what was happening. While I didn't see their face, I did see the back of them. They appeared to be male and wore torn clothing with gray, messy hair. With not many options to choose from, I run upstairs and hide under my bed, not making a sound. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, and I sure as hell wasn't going into the kitchen to get the home phone. With nothing to do, I just stayed in my room, hiding under my bed, when I hear footsteps coming up the basement stairs. At this point, I knew whoever this person was knew I was here. In my innocent 14-year-old head, I prayed he would just leave if he knew there was someone else here. However, that simply wasn't the case. Instead of accepting that there was someone else here, he took it a step further and proceeded to walk upstairs to my room. I hear him coming and I come up from under my bed with my mind racing on what to do. Now, this is where my lack of strength comes into play. I was trapped in my room, I didn't have a weapon, and I wasn't sure what this person was capable of doing. With no other option, I go to my window and attempt to open it as a way to escape. However, the cold weather from outside made it more difficult for me to open the window as the frame was basically frozen. All the while, I'm trying to get it open and I hear the footsteps walk up the stairs and stop at my door. He then proceeds to knock, followed by him mumbling something I couldn't understand. What freaked me out the most about this was the way he knocked. It was slow and steady, almost as if he were trying to intimidate me somehow. He tried twisting the doorknob, but it didn't budge, as I had thankfully remembered to lock it. In that moment, I had a hard time getting the window open when I suddenly hear a loud bang and see my door is now open. At that point, I pushed the window with all my strength and finally managed to get it open. I took that chance to climb out, and as I did, I caught a glimpse of the man's face before falling to the snow below. Fortunately, I was able to get away to the neighbors with only a sprained ankle, where police were then called. While the neighbors were nice, they let me call the police myself as they didn't want to get involved. A bit strange, I thought, but I could understand why. The police were very patient with me, but even after searching the house, they were unable to find him. What police had concluded was that he had entered the house through a breezeway door and was likely hiding from the cold. My mom came soon after, and we spent the next 3 days at my uncle's house. I'm much older now, and I have moved past it. My parents still live in that same house, but have installed various security systems and even have a dog. I still think about this incident from time to time, but I'm doing alright.